Welcome to the Book Club Life with Jenny Snow. That's me. And as you can see, we have an awesome author interview today with Jocelyn Green. Jocelyn, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
And I have to tell you that I'm extra excited for Jocelyn to be here since she is my first and has had to deal with so many little internet problems. But we are here, and so thank you, Jocelyn. I so appreciate it. And as a thank you, and to get the show started off right, I'm going to give away 2 of Jocelyn's books. So stay tuned to the end for that. And also, it'll be in the show notes how to enter the drawing for 2 of her books. So, Jocelyn, my first knowledge of you was when I saw this book cover, The Mark of the King, all over social media. And then I heard that it won a Christie Award. So I had to read it, and I read it and loved it. It was so deep, so riveting. And even still, you know, I can just see certain scenes. When I do this, you may even know what I'm talking about. In my mind, and it was just such a good story, and I felt like I learned about that time in history, but that was just, you know, the backdrop of the amazing story. And then last summer, my book club read your book, A Refuge Assured, and it was just as good, and I loved it. It was also set partly in France,
right?
And that was really good. And you were nice enough to answer some questions for my book club, so that was really cool.
Sure.
And then Between Two Shores, the one I just reviewed in an earlier episode, I got for Christmas last year, and it was wonderful. And when you agreed to be on the interview, I went and looked you up on your website and saw that you have written way more books than just these 3 Civil War series. And also the 5 love languages for military families with the love languages guy, Gary Chapman.
Right. Good job.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. How did that come about? Do you want to tell us? I guess you have some military experience in your family. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes. Only through my husband, who was a Coast Guard officer when I met him. And so we got married in Washington, D.C., and we moved to Alaska 2 days later. So through my limited experience as a Coast Guard wife, I started having a heart for military families. And my first book was actually a devotional book for military wives through Moody Publishers. And then we did another book to follow up on that. And those are the Faith Deployed books for any military wives out there who may be interested. And I think it was a few years after that, Moody said, we want to do this military edition for the 5 love languages. Would you be willing to come alongside Dr. Chapman and
Wow.
make this happen? And I pinched myself pretty hard for a little bit. And then, of course, I said yes. So that was such a privilege to do that.
That is really cool. So what is your top love language?
My primary love language is quality time, which we found out kind of the hard way our first year of marriage. And we hadn't actually read the book then by that point either. So that's tough if you're in a military marriage and your love language is quality time. Physical touch would be another tough one for that kind of couple, but that's not my love language. It's quality time. My quality time is watch Netflix and eat snacks with me, or yes. Go to a bookstore and have a latte and talk about books. I mean, we could do these things at home too, but I like to get out every once in a while.
Yes, definitely. Probably one of my top love languages is probably touch. So yes, we watch Netflix, and my husband will rub my feet and I will tickle his back. And that, you know, how can you argue when you're getting a foot rub?
You just can't. You can't. That's totally my son. And I figured this out after I was working on the book, that his love language is physical touch. And he calls it the comfiness. Like he says, can you give me the comfiness? And it's just like rubbing his shoulders and all that kind of stuff that a little boy wants from his mom. So now I get it.
Sweet. Very sweet. Well, so with the military background, and you started with nonfiction, you say, and so that seems like a natural progression. Is that how you started writing, a lot of your books are set during wartime. So could you tell us a little bit how you started writing? And then the 3 books that I mentioned to you all have something to do with France. So tell us about that.
Okay, well, first of all, to answer why am I writing about war all the time? So out of the 7 novels, and I have 1 novella, and they all do take place during wartime. That began because Moody decided they wanted to do more fiction, and they wanted to do something military themed for some reason. Maybe they were even thinking of a contemporary military story for the military community. And so they called me and asked if I had any interest in writing fiction, and they told me what they were thinking of. And so I actually pitched 2 different series of books to them. The Civil War series, which actually was published, and I pitched a 3-book contemporary military series. And they liked both, but they could only do 1 at the time. And so they did the Civil War one.
And what was the name of that first book?
The first book is Wedded to War.
Okay.
And that's in the Heroines Behind the Lines Civil War series.
Okay.
And then so I guess ever since then, I've had at least 1 character who was involved in the military. With the Mark of the King, it was Mark Paul, who was a captain in the French army, which was a little different for me. But as to the question, why has there been a French connection in the last 3 novels? Probably because my brother and sister-in-law lived in France for a few years. My brother was a missionary there. He married Audrey, who grew up in a suburb outside of Paris. And so as we've been getting to know my brother's family, getting to know Audrey more, I've just naturally been looking for more connections between French history and North American history. And what I found is just fascinating. And what I love about it is that we know a lot about British colonial history in America, but we don't know as much, not nearly as much, about the French influence on this continent. And so if I can find a story in history that is really exciting to me, that I also really didn't know anything about, that's the story that I want to write. Because I'm hoping that if I look at something and say, wait a second, what happened? That hopefully my readers will have the same kind of interest level.
I did. In fact, when I was reading A Refuge Assured, I was thinking back to my high school days with the French Revolution, and it just really brought it to life, just how scary, that would be to live over there at that time, especially if you were, a little bit wealthy or appeared to be.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah. So your brother lived in France. Did you get to go over there and do a little, fun living and research?
Fun living in France. Yes, I did go over with my husband. We actually took our trip over there before he was married. And so we didn't meet Audrey until she came to the States. So when I went to France, I didn't know that I was going to be writing any fiction, actually. That was before any of it had started, which is okay, because a lot of the material that I would have been interested in seeing had been destroyed in a fire. And because I was writing set in the 1700s, some of the things that I most wanted to see aren't there anymore, just because of how things have happened. So I have gone to New Orleans and done a lot of research, and some of the documents there are only in French. I don't speak French, but my brother and sister-in-law now live in the adjacent town to us. And so Audrey helped translate some key chapters. So I'm in.
That must be nice.
Yeah.
That must be very nice.
Very
yes, you have to make sure you get a good Christmas presents.
That's right.
So, okay, so, sorry. So for the next section of our interview, I want to ask you some questions that I would ask, at my book club, or that we would all answer. And so if you would be so kind as to answer them. And then after that, we'll do a just for fun section of questions.
Sounds good.
So let me find it. In Between Two Shores, obviously it's set during wartime, the French and Indian War. And courage is a theme of the book. You know, none of us like war. We want it to never happen, but sometimes it does. And even if we don't experience war or have or know anybody in the military or armed forces, things happen that we don't want to happen. We all have to find that courage at some time in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you had to be courageous in your life?
Well, I was thinking about this, and the answer that I gave you in an earlier interview for your book club, I'll briefly touch on, but I thought of something else too. So the first thing is that I lived in Northern Virginia and worked on Capitol Hill during the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. So I was really close, and it really felt like that happened in my backyard. I used to stop at the Pentagon every day on my way to work because it was like a big metro transit center. And I got a ride in with my roommate to work that day. So I wasn't there when the plane hit it. But people from my church were, and burned very badly. And so it was it felt really personal. And then after that, the National Guard was out, and they were armed, and we would pass these soldiers on our way to work, and the skies were full of helicopters and planes that were just like patrolling the air. And when we would drive across the bridge to take us from Washington, D.C. into Virginia on our daily commute, the rule was we were supposed to roll down our windows so that if the bridge were to be bombed and we would fall into the river, we could escape out of our cars. So these are all kind of things that we just had to absorb, like, okay, this is the new normal, but the new normal had this giant message that was, you're not safe.
Right.
Anything could happen at any time. And something else that people don't realize is that a lot of rumors were reported as news right afterwards. Like the State Department has been bombed. Well, it wasn't. And like all these things. So it took a lot of courage just to keep going about your daily routine and try not to think about the fact that anything could happen and you're not safe.
Right.
But the other thing that I thought would be maybe a little bit more relevant to people who haven't been close to a terrorist attack. I experienced clinical depression several years ago, and I have not had to deal with that for a long time, praise the Lord. But when I was in the midst of it, I moved from Iowa to Washington, D.C. And I think it takes a lot of courage to, if you are feeling depressed for, whatever the circumstances, whatever the reason, to tell yourself that that tomorrow is going to be different from today. Right. And to keep going. That was one of the things that was really hard for me during that time. I just had such a hard time thinking outside of the present moment. And it does take courage to say, I will feel better soon. Today might not be a good day. That's okay. We're just going to keep on going. Right.
That is very, very good advice and very true. And that it doesn't last forever.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. One quote that I loved from the story is on page, well, I won't tell the page because I don't want to give away how important.
Okay.
But one character said to another, I have a story for you. It is the story of us, and we are writing it even now. And I loved that line. If I highlighted my books, I would have highlighted it. So give me 3 words that you would like to be characteristic of your life story.
Okay. The first one would be faith. Without faith, I don't know how people get through their days and their lives. Faith would be the first one. The second one would be significance. So just this idea that what I'm doing with my life matters. Hopefully it matters on an eternal level. If what I'm doing with my family or even through my books touches someone on a soul level, hopefully that will be eternal, lasting significance. And the third one I would hope would be service. because not really as an author. I don't know if maybe I'm serving readers. I don't know. But I'm just thinking about in my own community and with my own family. Being an author is just one of the hats I wear. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter, member of a church. So I hope that my life would be characterized by doing things for others and not being so wrapped up in my own agenda that I'm blind to the needs of the people that are right in front of me.
Yeah, I love that. I can say that you are serving your readers.
Thanks.
After a long day of mothering and work and whatnot, it's nice to have a good book at the end of the day. But I love what you're saying, that your job as an author and a writer is not all encompassing.
Right.
You are in the story of your husband and your children. And tell us about your family. Actually, you haven't told us. Do you have kids?
Sure. Yep. Rob and I have 2 kids. My daughter will be 13 very soon.
So we'll pray for you. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
She's a great kid, but
yes. We'll pray for her too. That's hard to be a teen.
Strong emotions. We're navigating new territory.
Yes.
She is an artist like her dad.
That's cool.
And my son is 10. I homeschool them right now, so we have a lot of time together. And let's see, my husband works at the university that's here. He's a web developer there. So he actually designed my website for me. Hooray.
Oh.
I'm so glad that he's my built-in tech support. And like I mentioned, my brother's family lives like 20 minutes away. My parents live 20 minutes away. So we are very fortunate that we have family close by.
That's good. That's very good. Okay. Next question. So in the book, names are very meaningful. What does Jocelyn mean, and what do you love about your name?
It means joyful one. And I like that because we might not always be happy, but it is possible to have joy, which I consider like a deeper, more abiding contentment and satisfaction. And the joy of the Lord is our salvation. And I also like that I didn't feel like I had to come up with a pen name because Jocelyn is unusual enough to put on a book cover. So
yes,
that's nice.
It has a nice ring to it. Has anyone ever said, "Quit Jocelyn me"?
Oh yeah.
So yes, I guess everybody has to deal with with name calling, no matter what your name is.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Here's one that I think, well, everybody, but especially moms, or me as a mom, I connect with this.
Okay.
There was a line that just said, "It is time to do what we can," and I need that line a lot in my life. Just things can be overwhelming and you can feel frozen. What is something that can be overwhelming to you, and how do you push through that, roll up your sleeves, and do what you can?
Right. I think life as a woman these days, we have so many different roles, and they're important to different people. Like I mentioned, like wife, mom, author, sister, aunt. I've got these 2 little nieces that are adorable. And I can't be excellent in all of those roles on the same day.
Right.
I can't do the laundry and make freezer meals in the same day. Like I just have to remember that, first of all, my own expectations for myself are probably higher than other people's expectations for me. And I also am a big fan of just writing things down. I use something called the Panda Planner. I don't know why it's called Panda, but it helps me prioritize for the day and for the week and for the month. So if I can see it written down, I might feel bad that I'm not connecting with my sister-in-law right here. But then I can look and say, okay, but next week we're going to go out for coffee, or just something like that. So it's hard. And I actually wrote a book kind of on this topic called Free to Lean, Making Peace with Your Lopsided Life. And that's just the idea that we don't have to be excellent at absolutely everything. It's
Right.
okay. Like, what is your strength? It's okay to put a lot of your time into what you're good at and to have certain priorities. So,
That's
good
good.
question.
That's good. I think that's something that we have to, or at least I have to remember or remind myself often that
Yeah.
you can't do everything all at once, and your ideals of how you would like to be are perfection, and you can't have perfection in
No,
every area of life.
that's right.
Okay, let's see, one more. I think we've talked about that one. Okay, so guilt is a theme of the story. There's some guilt in there, sometimes false guilt, sometimes understandable guilt. You know, we're not perfect. We do things that are wrong and they affect other people.
Mhm.
But often as women, sometimes we have false guilt, where you just feel guilty no matter what you do.
Mhm.
How do you deal with that, and what's your advice for that?
Boy, I used to deal with false guilt all the time. Like, it has taken me years to get to a point where I can identify it in myself. Um, Something that I've had to tell myself is just to isolate what is the thing that I'm feeling bad about. Sometimes I feel bad about how somebody else has reacted to something that I've said or
Mm-hmm.
done. If I have a clear conscience about the thing that I have said or done, then other people's reactions are not my responsibility.
Right.
So it's not right for me to feel like I've done something wrong just because,
They didn't
unless,
like it.
unless I've actually done something wrong. Right. So I have to kind of have these mental boundary lines in my mind and say, this is what I am responsible for. This is what that person is responsible for. And false guilt for me has usually come from not being able to do enough, or not being able to do as well in a particular area as I wanted to. But it just comes down to that whole 24 hours in a day. I just can't do everything in every
Right.
day. So, and if I'm really struggling with false guilt, I will just mention it to my husband, and he's very good about saying it like it is and helping me just release it.
That's good. My husband's good at that too. It's nice.
Yeah, it is really nice.
Okay, let's go to our just for fun questions.
Okay.
Um, so I love your Facebook page, and sometimes you post pictures of pie, and I
I
just love your
do.
pie. So, what is your favorite dessert?
Pie.
Is
My
it?
favorite dessert is pie. Yes, and I get excited about Pi Day, March 14th, 314. And then this is kind of life-changing for me. I realized that every day is Pi Day in my house because our house number is 314.
That's so
So
funny.
I could totally justify it. I don't actually eat it all that much, but I do like to talk about it.
Yes. It makes it that much better when you actually do. What's your
Yeah.
favorite? Do you have a favorite pie?
Strawberry rhubarb.
Oh, I've never had that actually. I've only read
Mm.
about it.
Rhubarb is pretty big here in Iowa.
Okay.
Not
Does it
everybody
grow
likes
locally? Is that why?
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Hmm.
What do you do to recharge after you have finished a novel or a book?
Yes, I will binge read other people's books. And because when I'm writing my own, um, I don't read as much as I want to, and then I will just read. Or I mean, I would love to go to an art museum and just anything creative, even watching well-made movies or shows or a documentary. All of that is recharging, but mostly reading other people's books.
Okay. So two questions. One, how long does it take you to write your novels? And second, what is a book that you've enjoyed recently?
Okay, it feels like a really long time to write a novel. There's several months of research, and then I usually spend about 3 months writing the rough draft. And that's an
Wow.
intense 3 months. Like, that means I've got to do it like 6 hours a day sometimes
Wow.
for 3 months. Um, I don't really recommend my method. I feel like it would be much better to spread it out. That's just how I do it because I can't stop researching. That's my problem. So months of research, like 4, 5, 6. For Wedded to War, I spent 9 months researching and then 3 months writing, which is nuts. I don't have time to do that anymore. And then I turn it into my editor. Then they get back to me within a few weeks with suggestions. And then I spend another 2 months rewriting it. And then we go back and forth with more and more edits. So, and from the time I turn it in to the time it is released is a full year. So then when you add on the time that I was writing before I turned it in and the time I was researching, so it could be a year and 6 months easily from the time I think of it to the time it's released. And then your other question was, what have I enjoyed recently? I have recently enjoyed reading The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery.
Okay.
Yeah. Rachel McMillan got me into it because she was doing a read-along on Facebook, and I joined the group, and it is a really fun book. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will have to give that one a try.
Yeah, sometime.
So, okay, next question. Favorite movie or TV show of all time, or just a favorite if it's too hard to pick one?
Yeah, it's way too hard. But I really enjoyed The Crown, which has been on Netflix about Queen Elizabeth. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Spring, summer, fall, or winter, and why?
Spring, because I live in Iowa and winters are pretty brutal. And when spring comes, everyone is like, look at the grass, it's so green. Look at the sky. My hands don't hurt anymore.
I can feel my veins.
Yeah, it's like I get to just like go around outside. So everyone's just in such a good mood in the springtime. And I love seeing things pop up where you think that winter is just never going to end. And then it does every year. So it's a total life lesson, I suppose. But
that's good. Okay, this might not be super quick, but it might be. Okay. How did you know that your husband was the one you wanted to marry?
It could be kind of a quick answer, I suppose. I had been really brokenhearted from a previous breakup, like really. And I told God, if you want me to get married, you're going to have to make it super easy for me to know that this is the one for me. And I don't really want to have to work at it. Like, I don't want to have to try to be someone that I'm not.
Right.
So when I met Rob, after we started hanging out and getting to know each other, I interviewed him and I asked him like all these like in kind of invasive questions, like, are you addicted to pornography? What's the drinking situation? Like all the things that I wish I had known earlier in my past life.
Right.
And he responded so well. I mean, not just that he had the right answers, but he let me grill him. And this is so nuts now that I think about it, but I really just wanted us to both know what we were getting into. I created this document that was like a list of all of my faults and weaknesses. And I sent it to him. I'm like, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm bad at this. From things like having perfectionistic tendencies, which I think that motherhood has kind of kicked that to the curb, to I'm not athletic at all. Like, please don't ask me to go jogging with you or try to teach me tennis because it will end badly. I know it will. So it clicked together really well. Like, I think he was in the Coast Guard, as I mentioned. And so we were engaged 4 months after we started dating. And our engagement was only 5 months. And that was, I think we've been married, almost 16 years. So
you didn't need the extra 3 months to find all this stuff out. You just like, these are my faults, these are my strengths, tell me all your worst stuff.
That's right.
Or be done with this.
Get down to business. Yeah, I was like, listen, I don't really date for fun.
Yeah.
So if this isn't going anywhere, because we had both been out of college for years. We were both working professionals in DC. So Yeah,
Yes.
it was easy. Praise the Lord.
That's awesome. I think it's a really cute story. And I grilled my husband too, but
Good.
maybe not as much as my best friend did the first time she met him.
Oh, right. Friends are good
But
at that.
he took it well.
Good.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask one more just for fun.
Sure.
Can you tell us about an embarrassing moment? Or actually, I'll let you pick an embarrassing moment or a time that you laughed so hard you couldn't control yourself.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, this is going to be, I cannot remember the most, wait, I got one.
Okay.
I'm gonna embarrass myself even telling you about this.
Okay. It's just me. No one else is watching.
Okay, yeah, nobody else. Oh gosh.
You don't have to.
Okay, I better not share that one because the internet, it never goes away.
That's right.
But when I was a kid, I laughed so hard that I just could not control myself. But it happened so many times. I can't even tell you what it was. It was just, I was a ridiculous girl who thought everything was so funny.
Well, you must have been very fun to be around. And I don't fault you at all for not sharing your most embarrassing moment. I have one that you're not allowed to know it unless you marry into the family.
Okay. Yep.
So, yes.
Okay. It's probably one of those.
That barrier. Well, Jocelyn, you have been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming today and for sharing all your really deep insights and fun stories. So I will have Jocelyn's website and all the books that we mentioned on the show notes. And if you would, please subscribe and click the like. And when you subscribe, click the little bell where it says show me notifications if you enjoyed this and you would like to see more author interviews and book recommendations. So thank you all for viewing the Book Club Life, and until next time, happy reading.